Every sport has its ghost stories. These tales of incredible teams and forgotten champions that, for whatever reason, have just faded away from memory. Well, today we're digging up one of the most fascinating ghosts in the entire history of basketball. Seriously, just think about that for a second. Imagine a team with a legendary coach, record-shattering winning streaks, and a truly historic role in the game, suddenly just gone. It sounds like some kind of wild hypothetical, right? Well, it's not.
Meet the Washington Capitals. Oh yeah, they were real. They were absolutely spectacular. And their story is one of the biggest what-ifs in all of sports.
So to really understand how a team like this could just disappear, we first have to appreciate just how important they were from day one. See, the Capitals weren't some late addition, they were foundational. When the league that would eventually become the NBA was born, they were right there in the delivery room. They were one of the original charter teams of the BAA. And get this, they were led by a name that would become absolute basketball royalty. Long before he was the iconic coach of the Boston Celtics, winning 9 championships, a young Red Auerbach was cutting his teeth right here with the Capitals. That alone tells you this team had elite leadership from the jump. And with Auerbach on the sidelines, they didn't just show up to compete, no. They burst onto the scene and just immediately started dominating everyone. Just look at this number, .817. That was the Capitals' winning percentage in their very first season. It was the best in the league's history, a record that stood for 20 years, until the legendary '67 Philadelphia 76ers finally broke it. That's how good they were, right out of the gate. And it wasn't some one-season fluke either. As you can see here, in their first 3 years with Auerbach, they won their division twice. They were consistently one of the absolute toughest teams in the entire league. Make no mistake, these guys were a legitimate powerhouse. But their impact, man, it went so far beyond just wins and losses. They set records and broke down barriers that would literally change the sport forever. Okay, for example, during the 1948-49 season, the Capitals started with 15 straight wins. That was the best start in NBA history. And to put that into perspective for you, that record stood untouched until the '93 Houston Rockets finally tied it. It wasn't actually broken until the Golden State Warriors did it almost 70 years later. That's how incredible that run was. And then there is this moment, a moment that really transcends basketball. On Halloween night in 1950, a Capitals player named Earl Lloyd stepped onto the court. And when he did that, he broke the NBA's color barrier, becoming the very first African-American to ever play in a league game. His impact was so monumental that when Earl Lloyd was inducted into the Hall of Fame, it wasn't because of his playing stats. It was as a contributor to the game. His courage with the Capitals opened the door for every single player that came after him. I mean, just think about that legacy. For a team that existed for such a short period of time, having 3 Hall of Famers is just mind-blowing. You've got the legendary coach, Red Auerbach, Hall of Fame player Bill Sharman, and of course the historic trailblazer Earl Lloyd. So, we've established we have a dominant team, a legendary coach, and a historic legacy, which of course brings us to the central mystery of it all. How did this team just end? Well, the collapse was shockingly fast. You have to remember, the young league was really fragile financially, and it had to contract, going from 17 teams down to just 11. It was a painful move, but it was necessary for survival. Unfortunately, the Capitals became a casualty. In January of '51, they folded right in the middle of the season. They tried a brief revival, but by the next year, they were gone for good. And the final nail in the coffin was this little bit of league drama. When the team tried to come back in a different league, the NBA actually sued them to stop them from using the Capitals name and claiming their own history. That legal fight was the final blow. So even though the team itself vanished, their story didn't completely disappear. You can still find its echoes in Washington, D.C. today. Pro basketball would eventually make its way back to the nation's capital in 1973. And after a few name changes, that franchise became the team that plays there today, the Washington Wizards. You could say they're the spiritual successors to this forgotten powerhouse. And that leaves us with one last, truly fascinating question to think about. What if they had survived? Could Red Auerbach have built his dynasty in D.C. instead of Boston? It's one of sports history's greatest unknowns, and a powerful reminder of the dominant team that time just forgot.